The autumn wind cut through the canyon like a blade, carrying with it the scent of pine and distant smoke. Ayana stood at the edge of the cliff, her tall frame silhouetted against the copper sky, one hand pressed against her empty stomach. 3 days without food. Her people were scattered, driven from their ancestral lands by the blue-coated soldiers who promised peace but brought only death. She clutched the silver bracelet, her grandmother's last gift, in her trembling fingers, knowing she would have to trade it in the settlement below for whatever scraps the white traders might offer. The sound of hoofbeats made her spin around, hand instinctively moving to the knife at her hip. A lone rider emerged from the aspens, his horse picking its way carefully over the rocky ground. The man sat tall in his saddle, broad-shouldered and quiet as the morning mist. His eyes, pale gray like winter clouds, fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He was white, but dressed in buckskin worn soft with age, his dark hair touching his shoulders. Before we continue with Ayana's story, I'd love to take a moment to ask you something important. If you're enjoying this tale, please take a second to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It truly means the world to us and motivates us to keep bringing you quality stories like this one. I'm also curious, where are you listening from today? At home? During your commute? Let us know in the comments. Now, back to our story. You planning to jump? His voice was low, barely above a whisper, yet it carried across the space between them with perfect clarity. That is not your concern, white man. Ayana lifted her chin, refusing to show weakness, even as her legs trembled beneath her duskin dress. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his movements controlled and deliberate. Up close, she could see the scars that marked his hands, the weathered lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent under the open sky. He stood at least 6 feet tall, his frame muscular and powerful, yet he approached her with the careful respect one might show a wild creature. Name's Caleb Stone. I track for the army sometimes, but I'm no soldier. He gestured to the bracelet in her hand. That won't buy you much in town. Silver's common. What you need is food, shelter, and safety. I can offer all 3. I do not accept charity from. It's not charity. His gray eyes never wavered from hers. My ranch needs help. Winter's coming, and I can't manage the stock and the land alone. You look strong enough to work. You cook? Ayana's stomach twisted with hunger, but pride held her tongue. I am Apache. We do not serve. Didn't ask you to serve. Asked if you could cook. Caleb pulled a strip of dried venison from his saddlebag and held it out. Eat first, talk after. Her hand moved before her mind could stop it, snatching the meat and tearing into it with desperate hunger. The saltiness exploded on her tongue, and she had to close her eyes against the wave of relief that washed through her body. There's more at the ranch, he said quietly. And I keep my word. You work, you eat, you have a roof. No chains, no obligations beyond honest labor. If you want to leave come spring, you leave. Why? The question came out harsh, suspicious. Why help me? Caleb's jaw tightened, and for a moment, something painful flickered across his face. Lost my wife and daughter 2 years back. Cholera. Swore I'd never let another soul starve if I could prevent it. He turned back to his horse, then paused. Gold and silver aren't what matter out here. People are. You coming or not? The stone ranch sprawled across a valley where the river cut through red rock and pine forest. The main house was simple but well built, with a stone chimney and glass windows. Luxuries Ayana hadn't expected. A barn stood nearby, and she could hear cattle lowing in the distance. "Bunkhouse is there," Caleb said, pointing to a small cabin. "It's yours. I stay in the main house. You want privacy? You got it." That first night, Ayana lay on the narrow bed in the bunkhouse, her stomach finally full from the stew Caleb had heated for her. She stared at the rough-hewn ceiling beams, wondering what trap she'd walked into. But as the days turned to weeks, no trap revealed itself. Caleb rose before dawn each morning, tending to the horses and cattle with the methodical patience of a man who understood the land. He taught her how to manage the stock, how to read the weather in the color of the sky, how to shoot his Winchester rifle with deadly accuracy. "Higher," he murmured one afternoon, standing behind her as she aimed at a distant target. His hand settled on her shoulder, the first time he'd touched her, and she felt heat radiate from that point of contact. "Breathe out slow, then squeeze." The rifle kicked against her shoulder, and the tin can exploded off the fence post. "Good." His voice held approval and something else. Something that made her pulse quicken. She turned her head, suddenly aware of how close he stood, of the warmth of his body at her back. His gray eyes had darkened to storm cloud, and his gaze dropped to her mouth before he stepped away, clearing his throat. "You're a natural," he said gruffly, turning toward the barn. "Practice makes perfect." October gave way to November, and the first snow dusted the peaks above the valley. Ayana found herself looking forward to the evenings when Caleb would sit by the fire, teaching her English words she didn't know, telling her stories of the mountains and rivers he'd explored. "You never ask about my people," she said one night, her English improving with each passing day. "Figure you'll tell me if you want to." He poked at the fire, sending sparks spiraling up the chimney. "Past is past. What matters is now. My father was a warrior. The soldiers killed him at Cañon del Muerto." Her voice remained steady, but her hands clenched in her lap. "My mother died of the coughing sickness before that. I have 2 younger brothers. I do not know if they live." Caleb's jaw worked, and he nodded slowly. "I'm sorry. Do not apologize for what others have done. Still sorry for your loss." He looked at her directly. "For what it's worth, you're not just a pair of hands around here anymore. You matter, Ayana." The way he said her name, with such careful pronunciation, such respect, made something crack open inside her chest. The first real snow came in mid-November, a blizzard that howled down from the mountains and trapped them in the valley for 3 days. On the second night, Caleb didn't return from checking on the cattle in the north pasture. Ayana waited an hour past dark, her anxiety building with each passing minute, before she pulled on her warmest clothes and headed into the storm. The wind tried to tear her from her feet, snow stinging her face like thrown sand. She found him half a mile from the house, struggling to lead a lame horse through drifts that reached her knees. Blood stained his left sleeve. "Damn horse stepped in a hole," he shouted over the wind. "Threw me into a boulder. I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. His face was pale beneath the stubble, and he swayed on his feet. Ayana moved to his injured side, taking his weight without asking permission. "Lean on me, now!" Together they fought their way back to the main house, closer than the bunkhouse. She half-carried him through the door, kicking it shut against the storm's fury. His shirt was soaked with blood when she peeled it away, revealing a deep gash across his ribs. "Go slow. he gritted out as she cleaned the wound with whiskey. It hurts. I know. Her hands remained steady despite the fear coursing through her. But this will save your life. She stitched the wound with the same careful precision he'd used when teaching her to shoot, her needle moving through his skin while he gripped the chair arms hard enough to make the wood creak. When she finished, his face was gray with pain. "You should have died out there," she whispered. Disappointed? A ghost of his usual humor flickered in his eyes. No. The word came out fierce, urgent. "I am not disappointed." Their gazes locked, and suddenly the air between them felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Caleb lifted one hand, slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her cheek. Ayanna. Her name on his lips was a question and a prayer. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. "I am afraid." Of me? Of this? Of wanting this? She opened her eyes, meeting his gray gaze. "My father promised me to a warrior from another band. He was cruel. When the soldiers came, I ran not just from them, but from him. I swore I would never belong to a man again." "You don't belong to me." Caleb's thumb traced her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "You belong to yourself, always. But maybe we could belong to each other, if you wanted. I do not know how." "Neither do I, not anymore." His hand trembled against her face. "But I'd like to try, if you'll have me." Ayanna's answer came without words. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, soft and uncertain. Caleb made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, careful of his injured ribs, his mouth moving against hers with a tenderness that made tears sting behind her eyes. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay in the house tonight," he murmured. "Storm's too fierce. You can take my bed. I'll sleep in the chair. Your ribs, I'll manage." But in the end, they both slept in his bed, fully clothed. Her body curved against his uninjured side, his arm around her waist. It was the first time Ayanna had felt safe sleeping near a man in her entire life. December transformed the valley into a world of white and silver. Caleb's ribs healed slowly, and Ayanna found herself inventing excuses to check on him, to touch his shoulder when passing, to sit close by the fire in the evenings. One night, as wind rattled the windows and snow fell in sheets outside, Caleb braided her long black hair with surprising skill. "My daughter used to make me practice," he explained softly. "She had hair like yours. Beautiful. Tell me about them, your family." So he did. He spoke of Margaret's laugh, of little Sarah's fascination with butterflies, of the life he'd built and lost. And Ayanna shared her own stories, of her brother's mischief, of her mother's songs, of the life the soldiers had stolen from her people. "I see a woman worth saving," Caleb said, when her voice broke on memories too painful to speak aloud. "Worth knowing. Worth," he swallowed hard. "Worth loving." Ayanna turned in his arms, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I never thought I could feel this way. Never thought I would want to." "Want what?" "This, you, a future." Her hand over his heart, feeling its steady rhythm. "Together, together," he echoed, the word a vow. That night, they shared more than words and comfort. Caleb's hands moved over her body with reverent slowness, learning every curve and hollow while she explored the muscled planes of his chest, the scars that marked his life. When he pressed her back into the mattress, his gray eyes searched hers. "You sure?" "Yes." She pulled him down to her. "I am sure." Their joining was tender and fierce by turns, two wounded souls finding healing in each other's arms. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. By winter's end, Caleb whispered against her hair, "You'll carry my son within you." Ayanna lifted her head, meeting his gaze with surprise and something that might have been hope. "You wish this?" "I wish for a life with you, children if they come. A future built together, not on what we've lost, but on what we can create." His hand came up to cup her face. "Marry me, Ayanna, not because you need protection or shelter, but because I love you, because I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life." Tears spilled down her cheeks, the first she'd shed since the day she'd watched her father fall. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." But peace never lasted long in the territories. 2 weeks before Christmas, riders appeared on the horizon. Ayanna recognized the lead man immediately. Black Crow, the warrior her father had promised her to, now riding with a band of renegades who refused to surrender to the reservation system. "You will come with us," Black Crow demanded in Apache, his scarred face twisted with anger. "You are mine by right." "I belong to no one but myself," Ayanna replied in English, positioning herself between the raiders and Caleb. "And I choose to stay here. With the white man, you shame your people. My people are dead or imprisoned. I choose life. I choose freedom." Black Crow's hand moved to his rifle. "Then you choose death." Everything happened at once. Black Crow's rifle came up. Ayanna's hand flashed to her knife, and Caleb's Winchester spoke with thunder. The bullet took Black Crow in the shoulder, spinning him from his horse. The other raiders scattered, unwilling to die for one woman. But Black Crow wasn't finished. Despite his wound, he lunged at Ayanna with a blade. She sidestepped, fast as a striking snake, and drove her own knife into his thigh. He went down hard, and Caleb was there instantly, rifle trained on the fallen warrior's head. "Leave," Caleb said in halting Apache, one of the phrases Ayanna had taught him. "Don't come back." Black Crow's eyes blazed with hatred, but he saw death in Caleb's gray gaze. His companions helped him onto a horse, and they vanished into the trees. That night, Ayanna's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Caleb held her close, murmuring reassurances against her hair. "I could have lost you," she whispered. "You didn't. We're both still here." He tilted her face up to his. "And we're going to stay that way. Tomorrow, we're riding into town. We're getting married by the minister, making it official. No more waiting. Your people will not accept an Apache wife. Then they're not my people." His voice held steel. "You are, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure everyone knows it." They married 2 days later in the small church, with the minister's wife and the shopkeeper as witnesses. Caleb wore his best suit, and Ayanna wore a simple dress of cream-colored wool that made her dark eyes shine. When Caleb slipped a gold band on her finger, she felt the last chains of her past fall away. "I love you," she said in English, clear and strong. "I love you too," he replied in Apache, the words careful but sincere. Christmas came, and with it a deep peace Ayanna had never known. She and Caleb worked the ranch together, their partnership growing stronger with each passing day. On cold nights, they planned for spring, for the garden she would plant, for the foals expected in the stables, for the life they would build together. And when February arrived, with the first hints of thaw, Ayanna woke one morning with nausea and a secret smile. She found Caleb in the barn, mucking out stalls, and took his hand, placing it over her still flat stomach. By winter's end, she whispered, I will carry your son within me, just as you said. Caleb's gray eyes went wide, then blazed with joy. He swept her into his arms, carefully, so carefully, and spun her around once before setting her down and kissing her breathless. A son or a daughter, he said against her lips. I don't care which, as long as they're ours. As long as we're together. Together, Ayana agreed, the word carrying all the weight of a sacred vow. Always together. The joy of their news sustained them through the last bitter weeks of winter, but March brought with it an unexpected visitor. Ayana was hanging laundry when she spotted the lone figure walking up the valley road. A woman, moving with the exhausted determination of someone who'd traveled far. As she drew closer, Ayana's breath caught. The woman was Apache, her face gaunt with hunger, her clothes torn and dirty. She collapsed at the property line, and Ayana ran to her, calling for Caleb. Please, the woman gasped in Apache. I was told a tall woman lives here, one who married a white hunter. I am Nashota. I have news of your brothers. Ayana's world tilted. They live? They live, but they are on the reservation at San Carlos. The conditions. Nashota's voice broke. Children are dying. The rations the government promises never come. Your brothers sent me to find you. They hoped you might help. Caleb arrived, immediately assessing the situation. Get her inside. I'll fetch water and food. That night, after Nashota had eaten and slept, they gathered around the fire. The woman's story painted a picture of horror. Apache families crammed into barren land, promised supplies that never arrived, disease spreading through the camps. The Indian agent, Whitmore, sells the rations meant for the people, Nashota explained. He trades them for whiskey and gold. Children starve while he grows fat. Ayana's hand moved protectively to her stomach. We must do something. We will, Caleb said firmly, but we need to be smart about it. Going against a government agent isn't like facing Black Crow. This requires proof, allies, and a plan. Over the next week, Caleb rode to neighboring ranches, speaking with men he trusted. Not all were sympathetic to the Apache cause, but some, particularly those who'd lost friends to corrupt officials, were willing to listen. Meanwhile, Ayana taught Nashota English and learned everything she could about conditions at San Carlos. The more she heard, the more her anger grew. These were her people, suffering while white men profited from their misery. I want to go there, she told Caleb one night. I want to see my brothers, to bring them supplies myself. You're pregnant. His voice was gentle but firm. The journey is hard, and San Carlos is dangerous right now. Tensions are high. My brothers need me. And our child needs you safe. He took her hands. I'm not saying no. I'm saying we do this right. We gather supplies, we gather witnesses, and we go together. But we wait until you're stronger, until the roads are better. Please, Ayana, trust me on this. She wanted to argue, but the wisdom in his words couldn't be denied. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Give me time to build our case against Whitmore. Those weeks tested Ayana's patience like nothing before. But Caleb worked tirelessly, meeting with ranchers, speaking with army officers who'd grown disgusted with the corruption. Even corresponding with a newspaper editor in Tucson who'd been investigating Indian agency fraud. Nashota proved invaluable, her testimony providing specific details about Whitmore's crimes. She also revealed something that made Caleb's jaw tighten with rage. Whitmore had been selling weapons to renegade groups, the same groups that terrorized both settlers and peaceful Apache alike. He profits from both sides, Caleb said, staring at the evidence they'd compiled. Starves the reservation, then sells guns to those who rebel. He's creating the very violence he's paid to prevent. Finally, in late March, they were ready. Caleb loaded 2 wagons with supplies: flour, dried meat, blankets, medicine. 3 neighboring ranchers agreed to accompany them, along with a young Army lieutenant named Morrison, who'd grown sick of the corruption in his ranks. The journey to San Carlos took 4 days. Ayanna felt every mile in her aching back. But she refused to slow down. Nashota rode beside her, teaching her songs from their childhood, stories Ayanna had half forgotten. When they crested the final ridge and looked down at the reservation, Ayanna's heart broke. Rows of shabby tents and crude shelters sprawled across barren ground. Thin smoke rose from cooking fires. Even from a distance, she could see the listlessness that marked starvation. "Dear God," Morrison breathed. "I knew it was bad, but this? This is what Whitmore's prosperity looks like," Caleb said grimly. "Come on, let's find Ayanna's brothers." The reunion was everything Ayanna had dreamed and feared. Her brothers, Dakota and Aloe, had grown thin, their eyes holding shadows too old for their years. But when they saw her, their faces transformed with joy. "Sister!" Dakota crushed her in an embrace. "We thought we'd lost you." "Never," she whispered fiercely. "I am here, and I brought help." The supplies they'd brought were distributed immediately, under Morrison's supervision, to ensure they reached the people who needed them most. Children who'd been listless with hunger suddenly had energy to play. Mothers wept with relief as they held blankets thick enough to keep their babies warm. But Whitmore's arrival shattered the fragile peace. "What the hell is this?" The Indian agent was exactly as Nashota had described, bloated with excess, his eyes cold with avarice. "No supplies are distributed without my authorization." "These aren't government supplies," Caleb said evenly. "These are donations from private citizens. You have no authority over them. I have authority over everything that happens on this reservation." Whitmore's hand moved to the pistol at his hip. "You're trespassing. Leave now, or I'll have you arrested." "On what charge?" Morrison stepped forward, his lieutenant's uniform crisp and official. "Mr. Stone is correct. Private citizens are allowed to provide humanitarian aid to reservation residents. It's federal law." Whitmore's face purpled. "Who the hell are you?" "Lieutenant James Morrison, 3rd Cavalry, and I'm here to inform you that you're under investigation for embezzlement, fraud, and trafficking in illegal weapons." Morrison produced a document bearing an Army seal. "This is a warrant for your arrest, signed by Colonel Mackenzie himself." The next few minutes were chaos. Whitmore tried to run, but 2 of the ranchers caught him. His protests and threats echoed across the camp as Morrison and his men led him away in chains. That night, Ayanna sat with her brothers under the stars, Caleb's arm around her shoulders. They spoke of their parents, of happier times, of a future that might hold more hope. "Come stay with us," Ayanna urged. "The ranch has room. You can work the land. Be free." Dakota shook his head slowly. "Our place is here with our people. Someone must stay, must fight for better conditions. But knowing you're out there, happy and safe, that gives us strength." "I will visit," Ayanna promised, "and I will keep fighting too. This doesn't end with Whitmore. There will be others like him." "Then we fight together," Alo said. each in our own way. The journey home felt different, lighter somehow, despite the horrors they'd witnessed. Ayana had found her brothers, had taken the first steps toward justice for her people, and with Caleb beside her, she knew she had the strength to continue the fight. But trouble waited at the ranch. They arrived to find the barn door hanging open, fence rails broken. Caleb's jaw tightened as he surveyed the damage. "Stay in the wagon," he told Ayana, loading his rifle, but she ignored him, sliding down with her own weapon ready. They moved through the property together, checking each building. The house had been ransacked, though nothing of real value had been taken. It was a message. "Black Crow," Ayana said quietly. "This is his work." "Probably." Caleb's eyes scanned the darkening tree line. "He wanted to scare us while we were gone. Question is whether he's still—" The arrow whistled past Caleb's ear, burying itself in the doorframe. 3 warriors emerged from the trees, Black Crow limping in the center, his face twisted with hatred. "You took what was mine," he called in Apache. "Now I take what is yours." "I was never yours." Ayana stepped forward, her rifle steady. "And if you think I'll cower before you now, you understand nothing. Then you die." Black Crow raised his bow, but Caleb's Winchester spoke first. The bullet struck the bow, shattering it. The ranchers who'd accompanied them from San Carlos emerged from the other side of the property, weapons ready. "You're outnumbered," Caleb said, "and I'm done being patient. Leave now and don't come back. Next time, I won't miss." Black Crow's eyes burned with fury, but he wasn't stupid. He and his men melted back into the forest, but Ayana knew this wasn't over. It might never be over. That night, Caleb held her close, his hand resting on her stomach, where their child grew. "We can't live like this," she whispered, "always looking over our shoulders." "No, we can't." His voice held steel. "Tomorrow, I'm riding to Fort Grant. Black Crow isn't just threatening us. He's threatening settlers across the territory. The army needs to know, and I'll make sure they understand he doesn't represent your people, just himself and his rage. I'm coming with you." "Ayana." "Together," she insisted. "Always together. Remember?" He kissed her forehead. "Together." The trip to Fort Grant took 2 days, but it was worth it. Colonel Mackenzie, the same officer who'd authorized Whitmore's arrest, listened to their story with grave attention. "Black Crow's been a problem for months," Mackenzie admitted, "but tracking him through these mountains is near impossible. If he comes at you again, we'll respond, but we can't station soldiers at every ranch in the territory." "I'm not asking for protection," Caleb said. "I'm asking for justice. For Ayana's people to be seen as separate from criminals like Black Crow. For the good Apache to not suffer because of what renegades do." Mackenzie studied them both, the white rancher and his Apache wife, and something shifted in his expression. "You know what you're asking would take a miracle. The settlers want all Indians removed or dead. They don't distinguish between peaceful and hostile. Then maybe it's time someone taught them the difference." Ayana said quietly, her English perfect now. "I am Apache. I am also a wife, soon to be a mother. I work hard. I honor the law. I harm no one. If people knew more like me, maybe they would see us as human." The colonel was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'll do what I can. No promises. But I'll try." It wasn't much, but it was something. April brought warmth and new growth to the valley. Ayana's pregnancy began to show, a gentle swell beneath her duskin dresses. She found herself constantly touching her stomach, marveling at the life growing within her. Caleb became impossibly protective, hovering whenever she attempted any heavy work. It was sweet and infuriating in equal measure. I am not made of glass, she told him one afternoon, laughing as he tried to take a basket of laundry from her hands. No, but you're carrying my child. Let me fuss. You will drive me mad with your fussing. Good. He pulled her close, kissing her soundly. Then we'll be mad together. But their peace was shattered one morning when Lieutenant Morrison arrived with news. Whitmore had escaped custody during transfer to a federal prison. He'd killed 2 guards and vanished into the territories. He's dangerous, Morrison warned, and he's got reason to hate you both. Caleb, your testimony was key in his conviction. Ayanna, he blames you for turning the other agents against him. Watch your backs. The warning proved prescient. A week later, someone took a shot at Caleb while he was mending fence. The bullet missed, but the message was clear. We need to end this, Caleb said that night, his face grim. I won't raise our child in constant fear. What do you propose? I'm going hunting. Whitmore's not a woodsman. He'll leave tracks. And I'm betting he's not alone. Black Crow wanted revenge. Whitmore wants the same. Men like that sometimes find each other. Then I come too. No, Caleb's voice was firm. You stay here, safe, with the ranchers keeping watch. This is my fight. For the first time since their marriage, Ayanna pulled away from him. Your fight? These men threaten our home, our child. That makes it my fight too. You're pregnant. I am also the best tracker you have. You said so yourself. She met his gaze steadily. I will not sit idle while you face danger alone. We are partners, Caleb. Equal partners. Or have you forgotten? His jaw worked, emotions warring across his face. Finally, he nodded. You're right. I'm sorry. But promise me, if it gets dangerous, you'll fall back. Our child comes first. I promise. Our child comes first. They tracked Whitmore and Black Crow for 3 days, moving through the high country where pine gave way to aspen and granite. Ayanna read the signs: broken branches, disturbed earth, the cold remains of campfires. Sure enough, the 2 men had joined forces, united by their hatred. On the 4th day, they found the camp. Whitmore and Black Crow sat by a fire, planning their next move. From their concealed position, Ayanna could hear them discussing an attack on the ranch, on other Apache families who'd left the reservation. We take Stone first, Whitmore was saying. Make an example. Show these Indians what happens when they get uppity. Ayanna's hand tightened on her rifle, but Caleb touched her arm, shaking his head. Wait, he mouthed. They waited until dawn, when both men were sleepy from their night watch. Then Caleb stood, rifle trained on Whitmore. It's over, he called. Both of you. Come peaceful, or don't come at all. Black Crow moved with the speed of a striking snake, his knife flashing toward Ayanna's position. But she'd anticipated it, rolling aside and coming up with her own blade. They circled each other, 2 warriors from the same people, divided by choice and philosophy. You betrayed your blood, Black Crow snarled. I chose love over hatred, freedom over chains. Ayanna's voice remained steady. You could have done the same. Their fight was brief and brutal. Black Crow was stronger, but Ayanna was faster, driven by the fierce need to protect her unborn child. When his knife came for her throat, she stepped inside his guard and drove her blade into his side. Not deep enough to kill, but enough to end the fight. Meanwhile, Whitmore had pulled his gun, but Caleb's rifle spoke first. The agent went down, clutching his shoulder, his weapon spinning away across the ground. Should kill you both, Caleb said coldly. God knows you deserve it. But you won't, Ayanna added, breathing hard. Because we are not like you. We honor the law, even when it's failed us. They brought both men back to Fort Grant, where Colonel Mackenzie ensured they'd face proper justice this time. Black Crow would be tried by his own people for his crimes against Apache families. Whitmore would hang for murder. The ride home was quiet, both Caleb and Ayanna exhausted in body and spirit. But when they crested the ridge and saw their valley spread below, green and peaceful in the spring sunshine, Ayanna felt something inside her settle. "It's really over," she whispered. "The big threats, anyway." Caleb took her hand. "There'll always be smaller challenges, but we'll face them together." "Together," she agreed, the word carrying all the weight of a sacred promise. Epilogue, 5 years later. The stone ranch had grown. The main house had been expanded to accommodate 3 children. A son with his father's gray eyes and mother's black hair. Twin daughters who ran wild through the valley like young deer. Ayanna's younger brothers had found them the previous spring, and now they worked the land alongside Caleb, family in all the ways that mattered. On quiet evenings, Caleb and Ayanna would sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains copper and gold. His arm would rest around her shoulders, her head on his chest, their children's laughter echoing from the barn where they played. "Do you ever regret it?" Caleb asked one such evening. "Staying with me? Leaving behind your old life?" Ayanna looked up at him, her dark eyes soft with love. "I did not leave anything behind. I walked forward into something better. Into us." She kissed him slowly. "I would choose you again and again, in every life, in every world." "Then I'm the luckiest man who ever lived." "No," she smiled against his lips. "We are the luckiest, because we chose each other, because we built this together." As the stars emerged overhead and the children settled down for sleep, Ayanna reflected on how far she'd come from that desperate woman on the cliff's edge. She'd been saved not by a man, but by the courage to accept help, to open her heart, to build a new life from the ashes of the old. And in Caleb, she'd found not an owner or a master, but a partner, an equal, a love that honored her strength while cherishing her softness. They'd created something neither could have built alone. A home, a family, a future bright with promise. Together they'd survived winter's darkness and emerged into spring's light. And together they would face whatever came next, hand in hand, heart to heart, forever. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Caleb and Ayanna's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.